Welcome to Make EdTech 100. I'm Lindy Hawk, educator, K-12 EdTech advisor, and your host. This is a podcast where we keep it real about what actually works in classrooms. No hype, no overwhelm, just practical strategies, honest stories, and tools that make a real difference for teachers and students. So come along with me on a journey to make EdTech 100. So if you didn't know, and if you're not keeping up, there's a lot happening with AI developments and advancements out there, so much so that I have only been barely keeping up, and it's my job to keep up. So I know it's bad, and I know it's moving fast. I've been struggling for the last few years to keep up because of all the advancements, but the last couple months especially have just been crazy. There's a lot of big jumps in AI capabilities. So for this episode, I'm doing a little bit different. Instead of having a guest that I interview, I have invited Aaron on to be kind of like my co-host to help me just talk through and unpack all of the AI craziness from the past few months. So welcome, Aaron.
Thank you, Lindy, for having me. I'm flattered.
What do listeners need to know about you?
Yeah, well, I've been a career educator in rural states as recently as the 2025 school year, but I've since pivoted to developer relations and community marketing at a tech company. And I always tell people my skill set, I'm not the most techie person. I'm not a developer or coder, but I'm the conduit between those really techie developer types and the average person, whether it's a teacher, an administrator, or small business owner. I can speak the language of both, and I'm somewhere in the middle.
Yep, same with me. It's just I am very still much in education, career educator, still in education. You made the hop full on to work for a tech company, but that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on today. First of all, you're one of the people that I keep up with most on social media because you're always sharing really awesome tips and how you're using AI. And when you were in the classroom still, you were sharing so many great things about how you were embracing the technology and teaching your students how to use it correctly and responsibly. I think you were my most followed person on LinkedIn in 2025. Because they did that little thing at the end of the year where they told you who you most engaged with. I'm pretty sure you were my most engaged with person. So I wanted to bring you on because you are threefold. You're doing a lot with the tech yourself and keeping up with it yourself. You're also working for a tech company now, and it's based out of the Bay Area, right?
It
In
is,
Silicon Valley.
yes.
Yeah, so
Yep.
you are, even though you're working remote from Wyoming, you're embedded in virtual calls all day long with those that are the tech people in Silicon Valley. So you kind of have that perspective now. And then also you have the educator perspective, because how many years did you teach? Were you
Was a
close to
teacher for
20?
16 years, and
16.
I have my master's in K-12 ed leadership and a principal endorsement, but always preferred to be in the classroom. Despite some of my family members that were career administrators, I thought the classroom was a better fit for me.
Your dad was an administrator, right?
Yep,
He was a
and my identical
superintendent principal. Oh
principal,
yeah,
yep,
that's right. You
and
have
my
an
identical
identical
twin.
twin. Yes, I
hmm
follow him on LinkedIn too, and every now and again I'm like, oh, it's Aaron. No, it's not Aaron. No, it's not.
Same DNA,
I
different person.
Same DNA, different person. I love it. I still have to meet him in person sometime. Is it Eric? Is your twin
Eric,
brother?
yep.
Eric and Aaron. Yeah, that's right. Okay. And he's educator too / administrator. So yeah, so point being, you bring all three of those different perspectives in to give listeners a really good idea of where we're at with AI. So I want to start with a story. There's something about the TCA conference. It's always like the first week of February. And for the last 2 years, all of the big AI companies have released like a big update, like either right around February 1st, which either right before or right during TCA. Last year, OpenAI released Operator, which, if you're not familiar, they've now rolled it into their agent feature. So it's no longer called Operator. But at the time, it was basically like their agentic solution. And if you don't know what agentic is, we're going to dive into that, where you could actually tell it to go research a vacation that you wanted to take or draft an email. I had it in my Gmail drafting my emails for me. And it would open up a browser within the window and all these things. So I was frantically scrambling at TCA last year, excuse me, 2025, to make sure that I was making sure every one of my sessions, the people that came knew what agentic AI was. And very, very, very few people did. Okay, fast forward a year. I was just at TCA a couple weeks ago, first week of February. Same thing, huge announcements coming in. So OpenAI released Codex, which we're going to hopefully talk about here. Anthropic released their Opus 4.6 model, which, holy cow, I was actually texting my husband this morning telling him that he needs to go check it out, because now you can literally give it a Word document and it will edit the actual Word document and spit it back out to you. So before, I would always like upload a document, I'd ask for changes, it might give it to me. It might have given you a file that you could download, but you still had to do a lot of like copy pasting formatting. Nope. It does all the formatting for you now. So that was released. And then on top of all of that, there was all of this craziness going on with ClaudeBot, OpenClaw, and MoltBot. And if you're not familiar, we're going to dive into that as well. So that was all going on in the midst of TCA. I was like sharing TikTok videos just to kind of stay on top of it and inform my TikTok subscribers about it. And then, so all of that was happening, right? I actually had time to go to a few sessions at TCA this year. I'm sitting in a session and agentic browsers came up. And the whole room, and it was a packed room, and it was a pretty big room, came to a halt with mass chaos. For either a combination of, I think the majority of the chaos was they had never heard the word agentic. They had no idea what an agentic browser meant. The other little part of the chaos was they knew it, but they didn't know the feature that was being shown, and they immediately started talking about how to block it. And the presenter did a really great job of making sure that it didn't totally change the course of the session. But I was just sitting there observing, going, oh my gosh, these, like, we have some major work to do. We've been, over the last year, agentic AI has been the big push behind a lot of the changes and updates. Would you agree or not agree, Aaron?
I agree. I think a lot of us about 2 years ago saw copy paste chat GPT is in a tab or Claude, whatever you're using. And we thought, wow, AI is so awesome. And the new version of it is it can do things on your behalf or for you. I'll share how I previewed agentic browsers with my students. I gave them a Google Doc in a high school social studies class that had a list of 8 or 9 questions about a historical topic they didn't have a textbook or a reading on, and they were supposed to go out and do some research. And it's like a background builder on the League of Nations. When was it founded? Which country came up with the idea? And I said, I just want to watch how you do this to see, do you go to Google search? Do you go to Chat GPT? What tools do you use? But it was a trick because I knew most of them open a Google tab and they copy paste the question into Google search. A couple of them used AI. I let them finish. And then what I did is I took Comet Browser, I opened the same Google Doc, and I said, go find the answers and fill it in on my Google Doc. I hit run. And then to be funny, I took my Comet Browser water bottle and I went down the hall to get a drink. And then I just watched my classroom through the window. So I was still kind of supervising them. And they're like, it's opening tabs, it's researching, and then it's going back to the doc and it's typing. Like, is he remote controlling this? What the heck? And then I would just wave at him through the window. And the reason I did that was because it was going to show up eventually. Now it's in Google Chrome. Claude has a Chrome extension. So if you're a Claude person, you get essentially the same thing, and it can control your browser. And that was my moment of chaos where people thought it was a trick or it wasn't real. And it's just like, nope, that's what they can do now because they're built into your browser.
Yep. And yeah, if you've never seen an agentic browser or any sort of AI agent or agentic AI, it really does at first seem like a magic trick, like someone is pranking you. My students used to prank me all the time and like set sticky keys on the keyboards and the computers in my classroom And then, somebody would either, I caught on to it pretty quickly, but then like somebody else would come in and start using the computer and think that the computer is possessed, because they couldn't figure out the sticky keys. It's kind of like that experience, but like way more intense than sticky keys. And if you're not familiar, so agentic AI is basically AI that acts, and I always tell people when I say this creates a lot of anxiety. So I'm always like, take a deep breath. Seriously, take a deep breath. It acts autonomously. So exactly what Aaron was saying, you're not now just like going to ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini and giving it a prompt and copy pasting over into a Google Doc. Like it's editing and adding to the Google Doc for you. It's autonomous. But you gave the perfect example of, I always add the caveat that it's autonomous with oversight, because you gave it the Google Doc. You gave it the questions in the Google Doc that you wanted to do. So you gave it instructions as the human to say, this is what I want you to do. I want you to answer these questions about the League of Nations in this Google Doc.
Yep. And the way that I think of it, the super simple, not as nuanced definition is agentic AI has tools. So it's kind of like if you gave ChatGPT a toolkit and it has a wrench for this job and a hammer for this job, only it might be a browser and it can do a search, and then it can call this service over here, and then it can write to your Word or your Google Doc. And it's giving the same brain, that's the AI, the tools, and now it's an agent. So it could be a recurring schedule or a trigger, like when I get an email from this person, do this, or Monday mornings at 8 a.m., run this. Or like the browser example, you open up the tabs it needs for context and say, go off and do this for me.
Yep, exactly. And I always get the question at this point, they're like, okay, well, what they still don't, if you're new to agentic AI, you may not still see the difference between a generative AI tool like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude versus an agentic AI tool or an AI agent, which there are subtle differences between the two, which we probably won't get into today. The way I explain it is, let's use email for an example. ChatGPT, generative AI, you have to go open the large language model, or you might have it built in to like Gmail now. There's some generative AI built in there, right? But you still have to prompt it to say, write this email, review it, and hit send. Agentic AI, you tell it, I want you to respond to my emails. Tell everyone that I'm going to be out next week at the NCC conference in Seattle. And it goes, opens the email, drafts that response, and hits send. That's agentic AI. That's that autonomous part to it.
Which is a scary thing because people always go, what if it sends the wrong message to the wrong person or books the wrong flight for me or whatever task you gave it?
It is scary. And there's a lot of discussion. We'll get into this a little bit more when we talk about the Clawbot, Moltbot, whatever they're calling it now thing. But it's also it opens the question about security risk and data privacy, right? Like now you're giving we've already been talking for years, over 3 years since ChatGPT was released, about not putting in education like PII, making sure you're FERPA compliant, right? Don't put PII into a large language model. Now it's like 20 steps more than that, of not only just don't give it your information, but now you're literally giving the AI access to things like your email that might have really sensitive information in it, depending upon what your job is. But if you're a teacher or a school administrator, your email, if you use Google Drive or OneDrive, right, you're giving it access to that, potentially has a lot of sensitive info. So that's a huge discussion around agentic AI and education, is that data privacy. And that's probably one of the reasons why all those educators, not all, the majority of the educators in that session room at TCA just had no idea. Like I even heard someone say, I'm so confused. She was looking around like this because she was like, she had never even heard the word agentic AI. And then you put agentic browser in there and, a whole nother level of confusion, because it's no secret that K-12 education has a lot of barriers to innovation, right? One of those being FERPA, data privacy. We're working with minors under the age of 18. So the tech tends to move slower, and not just that, but other reasons as well, than it does in other industries.
Yep. And I think if you haven't come to this realization yet, it's pretty unanimous by people who see this stuff every day, in 2026, if you're relying on anything in a web browser or on a computer to assess your students' learning or track their progress, I'm not saying they're all using Chrome and having an agent do it for them. I'm saying they very well could be, even with free tools. So if it's something in a Google Doc, I'll share. Here's an example. One way people said to monitor for AI doing the work of students is go back to the revision history of a Google Doc and see if they copied and pasted in a giant 4-page essay all in one go. Like that was AI, that was cheating. That's not my preferred way. If that's what you do, okay, here's the counter argument. Now a browser agent could be doing that for them, and it's not going to just copy and paste one chunk from the tab they did the prompt in. It's actually going to be in Canvas or in Schoology or in Google Classroom navigating, and it's going to show the person's logged in. They made this edit at this time, and then they opened here. And I've even had students show me you can prompt it to write out the thing slowly, put in a couple of typos, then go back and edit them. And all of this is running without the kid touching the keyboard, but the revision history is going to look organic. It's going to look like a person did it.
That came up in that session that I was at TCA. Is like, and even like brisk teaching, they have an inspect writing tool built into that to show if any big blocks were copy pasted or whatever. But now these agents, when I gave Operator a year ago access to my email, I sat there and watched it type out the email and look exactly what it would look like if I was typing out the email. Maybe the only difference, which would be a subtle difference that you'd have to really watch, is the typing speed and typos. Like the AI isn't going to have typos and be using the backspace like a human would when you're naturally just typing something out. And the educators in that session, some of them piped up and said, well, I was already having that problem with students figuring out that teachers are using these tools to see if I was copying and pasting a paragraph. So what do? They write their essay in a large language model, do a split screen, and then they type it.
Yep.
So they're literally just like, I think of back in the day, you see all like the movies where they made the kids write lines and that was their punishment. So guess what? Now the kid is literally, that assignment is a literal punishment.
It's like typing practice to the kid. They
It's
didn't come up
typing
with
practice.
the thinking or the ideating or the editing. It's just like, I'll copy it manually. Yeah, and
Yep.
there's Chrome extensions. I saw a student make one that you paste in your essay, so probably ChatGPT generated it. The Chrome extension is open in your browser, and it's going to type it at a human speed, and you can dictate that. And you just paste in your whole essay, and it's going to go into your Google Doc and character by character make it look on the revision history like a human did it. So I doubt many students use that, but they're free and they're on the internet. So
Yep.
the crafty ones are trying to find ways, and you shouldn't assume that's the best way to filter for cheating.
Yep. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, I need to go try this myself. I need to know what's going on or what tools I should use or what tools students are using to do this kind of stuff. I want to give like a layered approach here. The first one would be the agents within ChatGPT, Claude. I'm trying to think. Gemini doesn't really have agents yet. I don't think. No.
No, just built into the browser now.
Yeah. I'm going to open in another tab, but yeah, built in the browser, which I'll get to in a second. Okay. So those have been there for a while, like over a year, I would say, maybe a little over a year for ChatGPT. So that's number one. If you go into ChatGPT, hit the tools button, turn on agents, and people are always like, well, I don't know what to do. If you don't know what to do to start, guess what? It's an AI. So you ask it, what can you do for me? How can you help me? Right. And if you have in ChatGPT especially, where if you have the setting turned on where it learns you and it learns information from your different chats, if you use ChatGPT a lot, it's going to know you're a high school social studies teacher. It knows everything about my work. So I have to give it no context now when I go in there. So if I go in there and I'm like, hey, what can I do with you? It'll start giving me very customized examples. And then from there, you could even say, give me a prompt, copy paste, put the prompt in. And just that's the way I start exploring these types of tools now. So there's that. Then the next level would be, we mentioned it, The Chrome browser, which is by far the most common browser, and I would say by far the most common browser in K-12 education, now has Gemini built into it. So if you haven't noticed over the last few months, in the top right corner, you now have a Gemini button that you can click. If you don't see it, it could be if you're logged into your school account, it's either that your school has blocked it in some way, or schools, depending upon their settings with Google Workspace, can do either a rapid release or a scheduled release. So you might be on a scheduled release where it hasn't been, you don't get the new features for a while until after they're out there. That's the one that honestly, so I mentioned the concept of in that TCA session of agentic browsers came up, but then the presenter showed an example using the Gemini within Chrome. This is not a full agentic browser yet. And Aaron, you said it perfectly. It's actually not the most effective. There's when we get into like the Comet and the Atlas, those are way more effective than Gemini built within Chrome. Although I will say, I've been using the Gemini built within Chrome a lot. The example that the presenter at TCA did, he had a question up, or it was like a writing prompt or something, and he hit the button. He just acted like a high school kid, like, "Hey, dude, I'm working on this problem and I can't figure out how to solve it. Can you solve it for me?" Solved, copied, pasted right into the Google Doc. That's when the conversation got waylaid to, "Oh, how do we block this?"
That's always the first question when it's educators, unfortunately.
Yep.
Well, and we all know this. What that presenter did, you could have done by switching tabs and copy and pasting. It's just the next evolution of the same technology.
It's right
Now
there.
it's built in and you can give it a tab group for context. That's what I usually do, is like maybe a little research, a little docket goes in, and another page, and say, look across these three tabs, do this task, write it out for me. And now it can use those instead of copying everything off of those pages, which you could have done
Yep.
2 or 3 years ago. Now it just does it in the browser for you.
Yeah, that's where I need to switch my workflow in my brain. Because for 3 years, let's say I have a Google Doc open and a couple websites, and I want to give the large language model the context of all of that. Actually, I just did this morning of whatever it is that I'm doing. I would download the Google Doc, and then I'd copy the links to the websites and put those into ChatGPT. It still saved me a ton of time, but it's that download, upload, copy, paste for each of those. Now I just hit the Gemini button. I already have the tabs open, so I don't have to give it any context to what information I want it to pull in and summarize or synthesize or whatever I want it to do. It's just right there. So it saves you that many more seconds from a productivity standpoint. From a student standpoint, it's that many more seconds saved and less steps to provide answers to what we used to call Googleable questions, right?
And the other thing is, remember that your students are going to see all the ways to cheat. They're not going to see on their TikTok or their YouTube shorts all the cool things that can help you with researching and writing and keeping track of your schedule. If all they see is the cheating way, that's one of the reasons why I'm a big fan of educators themselves have to share these technologies with their students instead of hoping the student doesn't know, because they're going to find out, or trying to block it, because a lot of us don't have the option to block it either. Your administration decides what goes into your Google Apps for Ed account, and they might listen to you, but probably not, or a committee takes 3 months to decide. So in the meantime, you're stuck with it and you just got to make it work.
Figure it out. Yep, for sure. And then, so the last level of agentic browsers, well, what are actually agentic browsers out there is, you mentioned Perplexity has Comet, ChatGPT has Atlas. How are those different than the Gemini built within Google Chrome?
Yeah. So what Google and Claude did was basically say, instead of rebuild the browser, we'll put an extension in Google Chrome and let that control it. In a lot of ways, it was cheaper than, hiring the people to develop a whole new browser. What Perplexity did is they forked Chrome, because they basically copied the underlying architecture. The Chrome extensions from your Chrome browser still work in Perplexity Comet, but they rebuilt it in a way that the agent is foundational. It's baked in. Instead of add a Chrome extension, It comes with a whole sidebar and it has a couple different interfaces. And it's still using large language models, but it's way more prone to taking action on your behalf. And I've had access to it since before it came out. Just in the last 2 weeks, so like while you were at FETC in early February, with the newest models like Opus 4.6 running Comet browser, I tested it and it did a task autonomously for about 30 minutes, and it took between 175 and 190 actions. So think of that like scrolling, clicking,
Clicking.
typing a text field. Basically how many movements you would take on a browser. It's definitely not faster than if you were controlling your browser. I'd say it's half the speed, if not a little slower. But here's the power of it. You set the task in a tab group and say, go work on this. And it runs in those tabs. Meanwhile, you're doing something else. So it's not like, oh, it's faster than Aaron clicking and typing and searching and scrolling. It's Aaron's doing that on the page he wants to. And then in the background for 20 to 30 minutes, it's going to run on its own and then say, okay, it's done. Or, okay, I hit a snag. Atlas is the same way. The difference is it's going to use your Chat GPT account. So if you're somebody who's really invested in that platform, you have the projects and the context history. Some people like it. I personally was not that invested in it, so it didn't seem super useful for me. Like I wouldn't use that if you're not a Chat GPT power user. If somebody wants another one, Dia browser, DIA, is another one that's been competing with Perplexity Comet. It actually came out before that, and it has some built-in agentic capabilities, and you can switch models. If anyone used Arc browser, it's the same company that built Arc. It's probably my favorite browser of all time. They just made an AI native version of it called Dia. There's a free version you can use. But the thing is, and one of the barriers to a lot of student uses, the good models and the best versions of it, you need a subscription. So,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the Gemini, students can get a year of the Pro plan for free. So, a lot of them have access to the paid features. Your district might enable them through your Google Apps for Ed account, or they might have a student AI Pro plan, I believe. It's the $20 a month one that they get for free if they're a student. So there's definitely more students have exposure to the Chrome extension than the standalone browser.
I'm writing these all down, by the way, and I'll put links into the show notes. I have not heard of Dia, so I got to check that out. And I'm with you. I'm a pretty big power ChatGPT user, but I also use a lot. I'm a big Claude user. I'm using Gemini now. Gemini 3. I'm using Gemini way more than I ever have before, and I still was kind of like meh on the ChatGPT Atlas. And I think that's why then I never got back into the agentic browsers because I was like, I don't know. I'm not seeing it yet. So I need to get into Comet and some of these others and play around with them. Okay, so we better move on. So many other things to talk about because we haven't even talked about Codex yet. So one of the big releases that OpenAI did that first week of February was Codex. Aaron, I've played with this a little bit. I know you've played with it a lot more, and your new job sounds like you've played with it a lot more. So tell us about Codex.
Yeah, full disclosure, I did spend an entire weekend living in it. Not because
Okay,
not
yeah,
because
so you're
Lindy.
way more deep than I am.
Well, I think we all have test projects, right? So, say for you, when a new Claude model comes out, you're like, here's a go-to thing that I have a baseline of what good looks like. Codex is interesting because I think a lot of the vibe coding and coding apps have not been super relevant to teachers because they're like, what
Yep.
would I do with that? Like, I'm not a coder, I'm an English teacher, I'm a history teacher. What Codex can do is it's basically ChatGPT's model, but specifically for coding. And you don't have to open a terminal. So you don't have to go to the scary blinking black cursor box that feels like 1980s. That's intimidating to
Yeah.
non-coders.
Like a terminal DOS looking thing.
Yep, because Claude Code you have to run in a terminal. I know there's
Yep.
a web version now, but originally. So basically, ChatGPT tried to build the same thing, but it's a standalone app on the Mac. It's now also on Windows, and it runs in the web. So it has access to your local files. This is one thing that's different. If you have ChatGPT in your browser tab, it can't see your downloads. It can't see your local files. Codex can. And people think, well, I'm not going to build an app or a website. Even if you can't, that's not your use case. You could take a folder. Here's one use case. I do some analytics reporting. So download the CSV files or the spreadsheets, put them in a local folder. Then open Codex and say, go in that folder and help me analyze all of this data. Versus before, you could probably attach files and do all sorts of importing and exporting in the web. Now it can do that in a folder on your computer. And then, like, one of the ways I use to test it, I think a lot of us have vibe coded a web page, or you make one for yourself. I make my kids do that for themselves. And I
Oh yeah,
took,
you have your kids vibe coding, huh? I love it.
yeah, I think he was 10 at the time, 10 or 11. My fifth grade son built his own math review game without touching a key. He
Wow.
just voice dictated into an app and it worked. Um, which I think everyone should be doing. But digressing back to Codex, I took a website that took me weeks and a bunch of revisions, and I was like, hey, let's redo this, make it look different, change the content, and move it to a different domain. And I did something that the previous best way I knew how to do took me, I don't know, 10 or 12 hours. And this was about a 30-minute process. And it totally revised the look, the design, the colors. And then I thought, okay, this was really good at the designing part. What's a design thing that a non-technical person would use? So I actually had it design my LinkedIn banner and some graphics, because people are like, oh, it's a coding model, but I'm not a coder. Well, design is fundamentally code. They're all just
Yep.
pixels and ones and zeros. It compared to what I could do in Canva or Figma, it made a way better LinkedIn banner in about
Okay.
a minute. And here's the best part. To my local computer, I'd say put it in this folder and call it designs. That's not something that you could do with ChatGPT or Claude on the web, because you always have to export the artifact and download the PDF or whatever it's in. I could
Yeah.
just point it
So
to
you
my
can
local.
actually tell it to save in like a certain folder on your computer.
Yep.
Wow.
And
Interesting.
and
Okay.
then you can back it up. So a lot of people use GitHub, and if you're
Yep.
intimidated, I was once so intimidated by GitHub, and I'm not an expert. Think of GitHub like Google Drive for tech people. And you can put documents in it. You don't have to build apps and websites. But it's just a way to back things up and then also share it. Just like a lot of educators go, oh, that form, that spreadsheet is in my Google Drive. Here's a link. That's essentially what GitHub does. You can say, take the project we put on my local machine, like those LinkedIn banners and this whole website, and sync it to my GitHub. And it's just like, boom, running this command, done. It's committed, like it's backed up there. So I do think there are a lot of uses for teachers, even if you're not computer science and building apps, that is what it's best at, but it can do all sorts of other things for you as well. And it can do it on your local machine from a web app. You don't need to be in a terminal.
Okay, so I'm hearing the big changes and differences with Codex is that download from an app. So it's more user friendly than Claude Code, which was kind of the leader in AI coding, basically, up until February 1st ish. And then it can also actually save files in specific folders for you. And then the thing I noticed in the little bit of time I've spent in there, I went in, and just so you guys know, like, I am not a coder. I am not that kind of technical person. So I went in and I could have asked it, hey, what can you build for me? But when you go in there, it actually has some sample prompts for you. So I just clicked the first one. It was something like build a snake game, something
Yep.
super easy, and just watched it run. The thing that I was like, oh, this is a game changer is it not only built the game, it built the app, but then it tested the app. And if you have never worked, like Aaron's now in the tech world, I work with a lot of ed tech companies, so I get immersed in that world. There is a job at least one person at every company that builds software called a QA. They're like the QA engineer, and QA stands for quality assurance. And what that person does is test and make sure their software looks for bugs, right? Codex is doing that. I'm not being the hype gal that's saying that Codex is going to take every QA engineer's job. I'm not saying that, but I want you to think about the job disruption that could be caused by the AI. And oh, and here's another thing about Codex, which I have not fact checked, but I heard that OpenAI actually had AI create Codex. Have you heard that? Do you know if that's true?
Yes, they publicly said they used their newest model to build it. So basically, the tool they were building helped them build the tool, which is one of
Yep.
those weird advantages in the AI world. Yeah, and
Yeah.
if you've played with other ones, here's what I'd say about Codex. It's very persistent. So I've used Claude to do a task. Claude can feel it's more warm, it's more enthusiastic, it's more human,
Mm,
but it also can feel kind of ADHD and kind of jump around and quickly do this. And it's not as good at looking through things in detail. I did a project with Codex just last night, and multiple times the little working bar ran for more than 20 minutes before it actually output something.
mm.
And I've never seen a Claude model be that persistent because it'll either take a shortcut, hallucinate, make something up, give you like a TLDR. Codex definitely seems more thorough and kind of gruff, like, okay, here's the thing, it's done, and it's not as warm of a personality as Claude models.
Which makes sense. Just knowing the difference between Anthropic and OpenAI, the companies that make both of those, and just knowing the vibe difference between Claude and ChatGPT, that kind of makes sense that their coding models would do the same thing. Okay, so that's a biggie. There's a lot to unpack there. And I know at the surface you mentioned it, but like really stop and think about the fact that we now have AI building AI. That is huge. And we have already been moving so quickly with AI advancements. Now that AI is building AI, you know how much quicker we're going to be moving with AI advancements?
Yeah,
AI
that's
thinks and works way faster. Way, way, way. And way is not even the right word there. It's a lot faster than humans.
yep, and it doesn't sleep, it doesn't take vacations or PTO days.
It doesn't have bio break needs.
It can
It
spawn
just
sub agents to make work, delegate jobs. Unlike you and I can't spawn executive assistants to go through our emails or do things for us.
one other big update, and then if we have time, we'll dig a little bit more into the effects of education. We might have to do a part two of this episode, just focused on how education should, needs to change, adapt, not adapt. But I want to make sure we talk about the Claudebot slash OpenClaw slash Moltbot fun. So again, I was watching this go down while I was at TCA. And by the way, and granted, I only had a chance to go to a few sessions. I had tons of conversations with educators and I presented 5 or 6 different sessions. And not once did I have somebody mention this to me at the education conference, which I thought was super interesting. And just like maybe a difference in people's algorithms, because it was all over all of my social media algorithms. That's all I could see. So a guy created what, and he called it Claudebot to start with. Well, then and it was CLAWDBOT. Then people thought it was related to Claude, CLAUDE, which is the large language model made by Anthropic. It was not associated at all. So then he quickly changed the name to OpenClaw. And basically, well, here, you explain, Aaron, if you're comfortable. Explain what OpenClaw slash Claudebot is.
Yeah. Well, and if teachers hadn't heard by then, the backstory is it's changed names 3 times. But you're exactly
Oh,
right.
was there a third one in there? What was the third name?
Yeah, well, and that's what's funny because I know you want to bring this up. Moltbot was a very quick change. And what the founder of this open source project said was Anthropic didn't like that it sounded like Claude, even though it was spelled differently.
Yeah.
I'm guessing somebody sent a letter from a
Copyright.
lawyer.
Yeah.
And so he's like, okay, I'll change it to Moltbot because it molts and changes and evolves. And that's where Molt Book came from.
Oh, okay.
Is
Is
semi
okay.
satirical. Someone said, let's make a website for all these new agents that's like social media, LinkedIn essentially, for the agents to post, not the humans. Then the founder of the project changed it a third different name to OpenClaw, which
Unclaw.
it got acquired. He got acquired by OpenAI this weekend. So now,
Already?
yeah, he and the founder, Sam Altman, said it'll stay open source. It's not going to go away, but he's joining our team, whatever that's going to look like. But this, just like Atlas and Codex, it's probably going to be a standalone product in ChatGPT
Yeah.
any day now.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I missed a whole. I was thinking it was Moltbot, not Moltbook. I missed a whole name in there. All right. But moral of the story is it's landed on OpenClaw,
Yep.
and basically only really technical people are doing it because you have to kind of create and run your own terminal. The Best Buy in San Francisco ran out of Mac Minis because people were going out and buying Mac Minis to be, because you really need like a dedicated computer because it has to have 24/7 uptime. And basically, it's running an agent for you, or is it agents? Is it multiple agents or just one agent that's like just working 24/7?
Either one. It's up to you.
Either one. Okay, so you could have multiple agents potentially doing different things, but you have to give it access. Like we were talking about the security, data privacy risk there. You have to give it access to everything, but then it can literally do pretty much anything digital for you, like save this file, send this email, put this event on my calendar for me. And you have to use, like, a lot of people were using WhatsApp to send the instructions to the agents to say, go put this on my calendar, delete this event off my calendar, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Here's how I view OpenClaw. We'll stick with that name and hope he doesn't change it a fourth time. It doesn't do anything new. You could have done all of this stuff with Claude Code, or if you were a techie person, you could have duct taped your own version of this together, but there was no hope of an average person making that work. And now, what's unique about OpenClaw is just the interface. In other words, if you like WhatsApp, you have group chats there, you're in the app, you can use it to talk to your agent, but then it can go out and use all these other tools. It can search the internet, it can search specific websites, it can see files or folders you have saved in the cloud somewhere, like your Google Drive, your Notion, your GitHub, whatever. And it can do things with that. It's also misleading. I tell people all the time, don't buy a Mac Mini. I have one under my desk. Mine is on a Raspberry Pi. Number one, a Raspberry Pi is way cheaper than a Mac Mini. Also easier to find in stock right now. But your local Facebook Marketplace is probably going to have a bunch of used, very gently used Mac Minis any day now, as people realize the tool is free, but the services you have to plug into it to run are not. So I think of it like a house. He basically built the app and said, here you go, it's free, you can download. But to make it work, you have to plug it into things that cost money to run. The biggest one is an AI tool. Like it needs a brain, it needs ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. You can use any one you can get an API key for. Those cost money. So his app without those connections is like having an empty house that's not connected to the power grid, connected to the sewer. It doesn't have electricity, doesn't have plumbing. Well, that's a pretty worthless house. It looks cool, especially that
Yeah.
it's free, but it's really about how you connect it to things. And what I would do and what I am doing is put it on a different device. It just doesn't have to be powerful. You don't need a fancy
You don't need a
PC.
full Mac OS device.
No. And if you do, because it's an old one, just know for anything to work, it has to be on, it has to be powered on and on the internet. So if it's a laptop, you're going to have to change the battery settings and the sleep settings to never go to sleep. But something like a Raspberry Pi can run it. I think somewhere between 1 to 2 gigs of memory is what people find it's good enough. So like any old laptop from the last 10 years could run this. Any old PC you don't still use could run this. But the other thing is you want it on a separate device so it doesn't have access to all of your permissions, your
Yep.
browser, your folders. Like as a teacher, definitely not on your work computer.
No. No, I have a
Um,
lot of tech directors that would be up my throat. Yeah, or your work emails, accounts at all.
yes. The way to think of it is you want to build it in a box and keep it contained. Like you don't want to give it that email. So what's interesting, some people give their OpenClaw agent their own accounts to things, like their own Gmail account, their own iCloud. One guy I know has two Dropbox subscriptions, one for him and one for his agents, and some things are shared between those, but his important like PII containing files or finances are in his personal Dropbox that his OpenClaw agents can't see. So really the moral of the story is you want to start with it on a different device and don't give it access to anything. You wouldn't trust a human, like say a student teacher. You would not give a student teacher your bank account password and your personal laptop 24/7, so you definitely don't want to give it to an agent.
Really good advice. And that's the things that I have heard that's like the big differences with OpenClaw is that now it's allowed agents to go externally is one part of it. Like you said, like you could do a lot of the things that you could do with OpenClaw with like the ChatGPT agents over the last year, but now it can go external. And then that leads to the second thing, which is now the agents can talk to each other, talk in quotes, right? And so that's where the Molt book, I had been calling it Moltbot, the Molt book came into play, which is basically like a Reddit for AI agents. And they've gone crazy and they're chatting and they've like made up a religion and they're talking about religions and it's freaking people out. This is a big we've got to wrap up here and I know it's a big heavy thing to leave the episode on, but I think it just goes back to that foundational AI literacy that when you understand that the AI is just acting with instructions, you understand that the agents were given instructions to do that and they're basically replicating a Reddit thread because that's what they have to go on. So they're just kind of like recreating that in Moltbook in their own little agent land.
Yep. And I would also remind people that there's no way to verify all the things on there are actually coming from an agent, at that any person could say, go on and write all these things, go make up your own religion, and the agent is going to do what it's been prompted to do. So I don't know how much of that is authentically happening, like an agent spontaneously went and posted versus somebody thought it'd be
Yep.
funny to create these conversations.
Yep.
Um,
Actually
but
prompt their agent to go like say, hey, let's go start another religion in
yep,
Moltbook. Yeah,
yep.
it's a
And
good
then
point.
a variation of that same Molt book style site that's been freaking people out. We've all seen the Upwork, the Task Rabbit, the hire a person to do this little project in Photoshop or make this web page for you. There have now been some sites pop up where agents need humans to do things in the physical world, and they will pay people
What?
to do the tasks. So it's like an Upwork for agents to find humans. And that's
Wow.
just a whole new world of like, okay, they can't go in the world and turn a knob or go to a
Yeah,
physical
yet
location
because they're
yet.
non-embodied
Yep,
because they're not,
yep,
but wait till they're embodied AIs. We currently have non-embodied AIs. Wait till they're embodied. Yeah.
yeah. But
Wow, I hadn't heard that one.
yeah, my biggest takeaway with OpenClaw is you'll spend way more time trying to make it work than you will find useful things for it to do.
Yeah.
That's one.
Yep. Yep.
The other is
Agree.
if there is something useful, it's making the technology accessible to people. So my example is my family calendar, my kids wrestling meets right now. They're what days do they have student council meetings in the morning? I wanted to build a thing that I could say, hey, in a Telegram or a WhatsApp chat, my wife in plain language can say, what's the schedule today? Where's the next wrestling meet? And something can look across the context it needs and say, yeah, in a Telegram chat, here's your answer. That's really the only advantage. And it is difficult to set up. So if you don't know what you're doing, make sure you follow a good tutorial or ask somebody who's done it a couple of times, because it's easy to put API keys in a place you don't want them, or give it permission to do something that you're not going to want to trust it to do.
It's pretty technical. That's why a very niche group are the only ones really doing it, which are still quite a lot of people. But like you just said, it just got bought by OpenAI. So just wait until it's embedded in ChatGPT and Atlas, their agentic browser, and yada, yada, yada. And that's the takeaway that I want educators to take from this is I know we covered a lot, and there's a lot that we said that is unknown and potentially scary and really overwhelming when you think of the effects on integrity of student work. I wanted to get more into that, but alas, there were just too many updates and things to talk about. So maybe we'll do a whole nother episode on that, like how, actually, multiple episodes to think about, how do you adapt and adjust? Because some people are saying, no, we shouldn't adapt and adjust, but I don't know how we wouldn't. And formal education just is not going to remain relevant, in my opinion, if we don't adapt and adjust. So there you go. There's my parting thoughts. Thank you, Aaron, so much for coming and chatting with me and providing the I'm going to say you're providing the Silicon Valley perspective, even though you are in Wyoming. You're still providing that.
And what I know is due to working with really smart people that are light years ahead of me and just distilling little useful bits that a teacher or an administrator, someone like you and I, would actually put to use.
Yep, for sure. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lindy.
Thanks for joining Make EdTech 100. I know educator time is valuable, and I'm honored you choose to spend yours with me. For more EdTech strategies you can use tomorrow and ways to bring me to your school or event, head to lindyhawk.com. If this episode resonated, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I'm Lindy Hawk. Go forth and make EdTech 100.